Welcome back to Virteva's Let's Talk podcast, a show that analyzes the newest technologies in Microsoft Cloud and how to best make use of those technologies to help your business teams be successful. It's episode 19. My name is Scott Ledwan, and this week we're joined once again by our security and end user computing manager, Todd Strand. Todd, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Glad to be back.
So Todd, you haven't been on since we were just talking about this in the pre-show. We haven't really sat down and connected on one of these podcasts since I think it was like May or June last year when we were talking about the Forrester Wave announcements. What have you been up to, just from a security perspective internally, personal life too? Like, what have you been up to? Let's get caught up.
Yeah, well, I guess from a personal perspective, coming out of winter, it was a bizarre winter for us here in the Upper Midwest. Feels like spring, but we always have second and third winter, so we'll see kind of where that goes. But as far as work goes, we've been very busy in both the end user computing team and our security services. We've done a lot in the space of supporting our customers, specifically in the security space. Really done a lot to deploy some of the new features and functionality that Microsoft has kind of deployed and rolled out, and just really trying to do our best to stay on top of what Microsoft is making available and aligning with best practices, but also staying one step ahead of the bad guys and keeping our customers secure.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that you had just sent out an email not that long ago about how we really saved a lot of our clients a lot of headaches with the Change Healthcare stuff. And I wanted to get into that, but we can talk about that a little bit later in the show. For our audience today, we're really going to be focusing in on the big Microsoft Secure announcement that happened yesterday about, Copilot for security going general availability, which kind of, if you've been listening to the show for the past couple of months, as I've been predicting that we would probably get the announcement at Secure and that it would probably be April 1st. Well, it is April 1st. So in about 2.5 weeks from the filming of this podcast, which we're doing on the 14th, early happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody that's listening around the time of March. But yeah, the exciting news is Security Copilot's going general availability. We finally got some information on pricing. We got some information on new features, which Todd, as we were kind of discussing pre-show, is the old article was still kind of trending at the top of the search engines, not quite competing yet with the new one, which was just published yesterday. So we've had the opportunity to kind of look at what they originally said was going to be in the tool versus what we've now seen is going to be coming April 1st. And we're going to be talking about a lot of the tools that it uses today that are already pre-existing and how we use those in our own environment and also for customers that we manage through managed services. I want to talk a little bit about how we see Copilot augmenting that. We'll get a little bit into the price on it as well. And really, just this is all very new. So everything that we say today can be different in 2 months from now. So if you're listening in August of 2024, is some of this stuff may have changed. But yeah, we're going to talk about what's exciting today and what our users and listeners can prepare for. So before we get started, I want to do the obligatory plug, just talk about the YouTube page here. So again, really love all the support that we've been getting over on the YouTube page. I've also gone through there recently and we've started putting up a little bit more content around Copilot videos. I've only got the one out there. There will be a new video coming about Security Copilot, or Copilot for Security as it's been recently renamed, as well as we are going to get kind of back onto that Tech Tip series and start doing a little bit more around Copilot 365. We also just recently added a new playlist onto the YouTube channel for shorter show clips around the Let's Talk podcast. So if you don't have time to watch or listen to the full episode, you can head over to YouTube and check out that playlist and get more bite-sized, like 5 to 10 minute clips on different talking points as we go through the show. And while you're over at the show, don't forget that if you like the content, it really helps if you can hit those like, subscribe, notification icons and kind of spread the word out there on either social media or just drop a link in your team's channel and say, hey, Scott and Todd, those two guys, they really told me a lot about Security Copilot. You should check out this section of the show and, just spread the good word. It really does help grow the channel and we appreciate it. All right, so let's jump into the high level view of Copilot. And we talked about availability. So April 1st, it's going to be opened up to basically everyone. For the past several months, it has only been invite only. They started broadening that out a little bit through a Microsoft form survey. In fact, as you could kind of go on there and say that you were interested, how big your organization was, and why you thought that you were a good early adopt fit for it. Well, now that's kind of behind us. So in about 2 weeks now, anyone will be able to get access to it. They didn't really provide a lot of information about how you sign up for it. But I think that, at least from what I've seen from my demo tenants, is you should just be able to go into either your admin center or your security center, and there'll be a box floating there that'll say, hey, I want to use Security Copilot. So be on the lookout for that. The other piece about it is I want to talk about the price, and the price is a little confusing, but I think that that's something probably worth covering up front just so that we don't get too far into the weeds on it. So from a pricing perspective, is they're talking about, rather than buying a license for each of your security analysts or folks that are using the tool, let's say $20 or $30 per user or $50 per user per month, they're instead moving to a different type of model here. And actually, let me screen share here real quick, and I'll pull that up. So, general availability details and pricing really kind of comes down to is they're going to be moving to a $4 per security compute unit cost structure for this, which seems a little bit confusing. And as I've been reading through the documentation on this, is there's not really a lot of information that they have provided thus far under this getting started section on exactly how that gets priced out. So questions that we've had internally that we're still trying to figure out is, so if I use it at 8 o'clock in the morning for 2 minutes, is this like lawyer billing? Are they billing me for 30 minutes? Are they billing me for the hour? If I use it for 1 minute at 8, 1 minute at 9, 1 minute at 10, is that 3 hours? Or is it you're paying per use, or based on the language of security compute unit, do they have some sort of magical calculator on the back end that says that, well, a small query is worth 5 minutes, but a much larger in-depth query where it's analyzing a script and it's giving out answers and it's touching Microsoft threat intelligence for the 65 million different points of information out there, well, maybe that is actually a 2-hour query that it's running on the back end from a compute unit perspective. I don't think it would take you 2 hours to get that response back. But based on how they're actually managing and determining what compute units and how that ratios out from a minutes to hours perspective, we just don't know. Just kind of scrolling through, and again, I'll put all these links in the show notes for listeners as well as watchers on YouTube that are seeing me kind of scroll through the article very fast here, is the number one question that seems like it is popping up in the comments that we don't have an answer on yet is, what is that cost? How is that cost equated? Susan Bradley, who's an MVP, jokes here that they're a bean counter in real life, and they don't really have a great answer on it either. My brain immediately kind of went to Sentinel pricing because that's also pay as you go once you get outside of the Microsoft products. So I immediately kind of pulled up the Azure pricing calculator, which is where we'll get a lot of that answer from when we're talking to our different customers about, hey, how much is this going to cost realistically? And as we scroll down to security here, we can see that there's nothing there for Copilot yet. So my assumption today is that we will learn more about this over the next couple of weeks and hopefully have better answers, both as consumers of the product and educators on it. But keep your eye on the Azure pricing calculator. This is where I believe that we will probably see that come up. If not, I'm sure that we'll be back in the next few weeks to couple of months on a future show talking about real world experiences with that and what other customers are seeing. All right, so enough on the pricing. I did want to make sure that we had an opportunity to cover that, though, just due to the fact that that's going to be everyone's number one question, because it has been since Copilot got announced last year, is how much is it going to cost? When can I get it? It's going to be the same thing on Security Copilot. But now that we're kind of past that, I want to step in and talk a little bit more about just some more details, Todd, that you manage our end user computing team and our security teams internally. So you're using these tools every day that Copilot's going to be able to start talking to more in depthly. So things like Entra ID, Intune, Purview. It's going to be able to kind of reach out there in all these different systems, and very similar to kind of like the Microsoft 365 apps for business side, where you open up Word and you pop open a Copilot window, or you open up Outlook and you pop up a Copilot window and you ask it questions. You'll be able to do the same things very soon with this Copilot for Security license in more of the security apps. So I think high level, like, I'll open the floor to you and you can talk a little bit more about the tools that we're using today, and then kind of in the context of Security Copilot, talk a little bit more about how you feel this new tool is going to be able to augment and save time and enable us to kind of take on more high-level tasks and be more effective at that stuff, and kind of do that continuing education piece as well.
Yeah, I think that there's probably two different paths that we can go down in discussions around the benefits of Copilot for Security. I think there's the excuse me, the operational path, where we talk about, do we have the tools configured as effectively as possible? Are we getting all the telemetry that we expect? And how is this data and telemetry being kind of coalesced and pulled together for better threat hunting queries, or better searching for misconfigurations in the management of our devices through Intune and other tools. So that's kind of one path. The other path is real incident response. How do we get to the root of what's actually going on? Microsoft, I think, has done a really good job of being able to really operate in the XDR space. When you have all the tools communicating with each other, you see a really good story of what's going on. However, as with anything, we need to research, we need to understand, we need to be able to determine what's really going on here with the data that we're presented with. And I think that that's where another place where Copilot for Security is going to help us be quicker at responding to incidents, help us kick the bad actors out, help us recover a compromised account. And not only just that, but is there stuff on the outside that we're not seeing, or things that are on the fringes that we should be considering looking at, or logs that we should be reviewing? Because if we're focused here, we're responding to this incident, there still could be other areas that we've seen a compromise or a breach in some capacity. So I'm really excited about being able to leverage that and being able to more quickly respond to threats and be able to really have the assurance that we've not left any stone unturned, and that we've done all the things that we needed to do to ensure the security of our customers and our own internal environments.
So you spent a little bit of time, and that's great, Todd, talking about kind of incident hunting and response. So some of the other areas where Copilot for Security is really expanding into now, and we learned about this at Ignite, is it's going to be able to start talking to device management tools like Intune, which is going to be fantastic. So as you're trying to find out, hey, is a device in compliance, instead of having to go through 3 different tabs to actually get to that information, you'll just be able to ask Security Copilot and it'll pull that back. But very similarly, it's also going to be able to reach out to Entra. So we'll be able to look a little bit more at kind of like conditional access policies. We'll be able to kind of take a look at, is this device in compliance? Who does it belong to? Who's disabled? And also it'll be able to kind of give us information on, like, hey, this user has had some, risky bets on security, and it'll alarm us. And then it'll give us the ability to kind of lock them down right from Security Copilot by prompting us, like, hey, this user, there's some risky behavior going on here. Would you like to disable this account or lock it out so that you can further investigate? I also saw some demos yesterday on looking at some of the hunting and threat information and them working through Sentinel. Is when you see kind of that risky behavior going on, it's actually giving you the ability to automatically generate messages that you can then copy and paste directly to Teams directly from the tool. So if you want to basically reach out to a user, and they actually showed this yesterday, and I'll try and get this into the video at this point, is it automatically wrote a message, and it kind of wrote it clunky, like the English in it wasn't the best, and they sent it over to the user. And I mean, they're just trying to get their point across that it is going to make things a little bit easier so that your security guy doesn't have to sit down and write out like a 2-paragraph message to the user about why they want to disable the account, or, hey, did you send this email to this person at this time? It just makes it a little bit easier to put that stuff together. And again, it's all about time saving. So Holly and I were on the show last week, and we were talking about how much time does it really save you. And Microsoft says that it's about 10 hours a month. So that comes down to about 10% of your month. You got some time back. When you start looking at this from a security analyst perspective, who wants to dig in, and there may be a more critical issue, is these are the things that I think are going to, really kind of take it to that next level, so you can have your guys focused on the stuff that really matters, rather than, hey, I need to pull out Grammarly here and write the most professional message possible to an executive to inform them that that person that's contacting them from Nigeria is not actually a prince, and they do not actually have a check for $400 million for him, right? So what are your overall thoughts just from a device management, identity? I know we were talking about Defender for Cloud Apps as well. How do you think that Copilot is going to affect how we do things today in those types of systems to make our jobs easier?
From a device management perspective, I really get excited about assessing conditional access policies over time. As you add them into your organization, they can have competing priorities or focuses. So I like the idea of being able to say, in that scenario, review the existing conditional access policies. Are there conflicting policies that might be challenging each other, or giving end users a cycle of prompts for things that are unnecessary, or can we condense them into a more streamlined policy? So it gives end users a better experience. It ensures that we're as secure as possible, and that the devices are hardened. From an interaction with end users, it's kind of two different workflows. You're getting an alert, you're responding to the alert, you're trying to figure out what my next steps are, all the while still saying, I need to get in touch with the user. We had a scenario just this week where we had a user who is based in a different geography in the world internally, and we needed to get in touch with them because we felt like there was some suspicious activity on their account. It turns out that there was some strange activities, so we were able to automatically disable their account. But being able to fire off that message real quick before an account's disabled would be beneficial to that end user, that, hey, your account has been likely compromised. If you need assistance in re-accessing your account, contact the service desk or something along those lines, rather than having to then reach out a little later to contact that user so that they understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. So very exciting.
So I put the proverbial cart in front of the horse kind of as we were talking about different items here, and I started talking a little bit more about some of the new additions that are coming to Purview. Not quite available there yet in my demo tenant as I'm looking at it right now, but there is a new feature coming called AI Hub, and I'll bring that up on the screen here real quick just so that we can kind of see a screenshot of it. But this is something that's coming to the security.microsoft.com portal. It's going to be placed in there. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to live in the new Purview portal or if it's going to live in the existing one. But it's going to live kind of like with the compliance and the data classifications and labeling perspective. And this was kind of the road that I was kind of going down when I started talking about Defender for Cloud Apps, because a lot of what this does is very similar to kind of what Defender for Cloud Apps does today, where it gives you kind of those high level visibility and risk associations with the different apps out there. So Copilot, security for Copilot is going to have the ability to, so right now you kind of have to go down each and every individual app entry and kind of assess what the risk level is with that and better understand what's going on. Copilot for Security is going to give you the ability to basically just say, hey, look at all these apps and tell me what are my top 5 and what are the prevention steps that you recommend that I put into place to further lock that down and be more secure in my environment. But one of the other things that's coming in Purview, and again, they demoed this in Ignite, and it's not quite GA yet, but it is coming soon, and they talked about it a little bit yesterday at Secure, is the AI Hub features. And what AI Hub does is very similar to kind of what we see with Defender for Cloud Apps, except it is more specifically looking at, and let me zoom in here a little bit. It more specifically is just looking at things like Google Bard or Gemini, ChatGPT, the open AI version of it, Bing Chat, which is now Copilot on the web, and then other kind of generative AI tools out there. So I would not be surprised at all down the road to see stuff like Grok in it from X, as well as Meta's investment that they have out there through some of their Llama language models. And this will expand over time, but the intention of what this tool is supposed to do within the context of Microsoft Edge, not Firefox, not Chrome, probably not other browsers, is that if you have users out there that are trying to go to these other websites and copy and paste your data and put them into the websites, is it gives you the ability to kind of lock that down a little bit or see that it's happening and then lock it down. And then it also gives you a little bit more of an idea of, hey, what are they actually putting into some of these prompt boxes? So like credit card information, social security numbers, bank account information, that sensitive data that you don't want leaking out. And then you can act on that as well. And you can act on that today through policies in Purview, but this will give you a little bit more of an idea of what's actually leaking out that you don't want leaking out. And then Copilot can kind of step in and say, hey, how would you like me to help with that? Would you like me to write a policy or give you general tips on how to write a policy to better contain that data, those types of data labels through Microsoft Purview information protection? And then it'll show you, hey, this is how you would write this out. And then you can take that, go to Microsoft Word and say, hey, I want to summarize a document. And then inside that document, we find out that it has a bunch of those sensitivity classifiers in it. And it will immediately recognize that, oh, hey, well, you're trying to use this document. It's locked by a label. Now, in context, your new document that you created based on the old one is now also locked by a label. This is, again, kind of at the E5 context, but at the E3 context, this becomes, you can still create those labels, but you want to educate your users how to actually apply them. What are your thoughts on that, Todd? Like that seems really cool. Like auto labeling in general, I think is one of the most valuable features of the E5 license set. But what are your general thoughts on like Copilot and AI Hub being able to step in and help out with this?
It's one of the first things that when customers are asking us, how do I prepare for Microsoft 365 Copilot, is we got to get our data in order. So there's a lot of efforts around kind of cleaning up SharePoint sites, Teams, who has access to what's externally shared, that sort of thing. But this goes a layer deeper to say, not only are we preparing for it, but let's have some proactive recommendations about how to ensure that we don't drift away from what our intentions were to begin with to prepare for Copilot. And I think it's very exciting that we're able to sort of have the anticipated path that we want to protect against and what we think we should be doing for our end users, but using the AI Hub to be able to say, here's what's really going on. Here's what you should consider. Here's how you should consider putting labels on these types of documents or communications is going to be real world use cases. And it's going to be far better than anything that we could brainstorm or consider from a preparing for AI utilization. So I think it's going to be pretty big, and we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. You know, if you want to put a message or a prompt in there that says, do you really want to send it this way, versus being heavy-handed and saying you cannot send this sort of thing this way, and everything in between. So I think it's going to give a good interaction for end users and help to guide them on best practices for data handling and being conscientious of how we're using our organization's data. And it also gives security some visibility into how data is being handled and what proactive sort of policies can we create to really just ensure that we're being good stewards of the data and ensuring it's not going into the wrong hands.
Yeah, I think in the article that I was just browsing through on the screen for our YouTube watchers is one of the features that's in preview right now that's coming as well is information protection on top of it for insider information protection. So insider risk, That's going to be another huge one. A lot of the customers that we work with, I feel like, don't necessarily take that extra step. Like, they protect their documents, but insider risk is something that I think that gets a little bit too deep. Larger organizations, I think, probably take advantage of this more often. But I think that as we start to see generative AI work its way into this, and that becomes easier to approach for different compliance departments, is we may see more expansion onto that. So I'm really excited to see what Microsoft does with that, with those kind of extended compliance controls over the days and months and years to come.
And I think that that's without prying into people's activities and things like that. That's not the intent. I mean, it certainly has the capabilities to do it, but I think one of the biggest things with insider risk management is just understand the behaviors of individuals and establishing a baseline. Being able to take into consideration what users' behavior is and be able to sort of add that into the equation when we're leveraging Copilot or Copilot, Security Copilot, to be able to say, how should we frame our policies that align with giving our end users the best opportunity to do the work that they need to do, when they need to do it, and where they need to do it. So I think that's kind of the takeaway for us is it's very exciting to be able to establish some policies around that, but still be mindful of users' behaviors and how they like to work.
Kind of last thing I wanted to talk about on Security Copilot, or Copilot for Security, excuse me again, is the new features that got announced yesterday. So we kind of known for a year what to expect from this, and a lot of that was kind of like, hey, I can create prompt books. It's going to help me engineer prompts. It's going to look at Defender TI. It's going to look at some of the other systems that are out there and be able to talk to them and give me a little bit more information. We got more information from Ignite about how it's going to tie into Entra and Intune. But of the new features that, as part of the general availability release that got announced, are custom prompt books, allowing customers to kind of create their own series of natural language prompt books so that you don't have to like put it in a notepad window and copy and paste it when you need it. Also, you can generate workflows off of that. So if you know that the next 3 things you're going to ask are going to be these, it can kind of continue that. They have in preview now knowledge base integration, which is going to allow you to kind of plug Copilot into existing knowledge bases you have. Not a whole lot got talked about there because it's early, but at least from what I think that's probably going to be. And we know that Microsoft partners with ServiceNow on quite a bit of different stuff, and we actually use ServiceNow internally for our own ITSM system, is I would not be surprised at all to see Copilot have the ability through a third-party connector be able to talk to your ServiceNow knowledge base, maybe even like your Jira or your Confluence knowledge bases, to pull that data in and then take that into context. We talked a little bit about, and I'm not sure if we talked about this in the pre-show or if we talked about a little earlier on too, about the ability to kind of give Copilot a little bit more context on your environment by kind of feeding it documents as well. So if you have your own written kind of like security policy on the do's and don'ts, you can take that, put it into a Word document with, as Holly and I talked about last week, proper headers and footers and links and paragraph formatting. You could take that, save that document, and then load it into one of your prompt books or your workbooks or knowledge base integrations. And then Copilot will actually, you'll be able to add that file and reference it so that as you're asking a question, hey, is Jane Doe in compliance with XYZ policy, reference this document, it goes and looks at the document and it will come back and tell you, well, actually, no, she failed on this, this, and this. And then you say, what should we do about that? And it will kind of give you some of that basic guidance. And that's some of the other pieces that Microsoft has really been promoting about this is it's going to save time for your more seasoned analysts who have to run these long prompt books or workflows, and they're doing it all manually today. But as we know, there's a huge deficit in terms of talent right now for cybersecurity and info security professionals out there. Microsoft has been beating that drum for, I feel like, 5 years now. And what this is also intended to do is help get those junior analysts up to speed faster so that your junior analyst becomes more of a mid-level or a senior analyst within 2 to 3 years rather than in 5 to 7. Couple other things coming out. So last couple of bullet points up here on the screen is just the ability to connect your curated external attack surface from Microsoft Defender Attack Surface Management into the tool. the ability to look at Microsoft Entra audit logs and diagnostic logs, which is something that wasn't previewed at Ignite, but something that a lot of us kind of speculated, hey, well, if it can actually see all the user data, can it see some of the audit log data as well? So that's going to give a lot more context to different events that are happening out there in the summarization kind of avenue of what generative AI can do. And again, whenever using generative AI, always look at it and actually question the answer you got back. Because as Microsoft has said in every footer that I've seen is AI generated responses may not be 100% accurate. And I saw that in the demos yesterday. I made a couple of mistakes, but we're all learning and growing as time goes on. And then usage reporting is huge. So with Copilot for 365, you have insights on your Viva Insights dashboard, which tells you how people are using it. One of the new capabilities in Copilot for security is also going to be the ability to see how your analysts are using it, how your managers, your SOCs using it, et cetera, so that you get a better idea of what value they're getting out of it, but also get the better idea, well, they should actually be doing these 3 things as well, and I'm not seeing that. And then you go back and you do some internal training and education to kind of help getting them to go down those roads. And then, continuous improvement is you're always building on that, you're learning from it, and you're taking kind of those next steps. So Todd, out of all the new stuff coming, what are you most excited about for our team?
I like the Entra ID audit logs a lot. It's just it's going to be very helpful to be able to dig into those more quickly because you have interactive and non-interactive sign-ins and kind of there's a lot of data that gets displayed in there when you're looking at it in the GUI and it's kind of tough to parse that out. Or I think that's going to expedite our investigation into some risky sign-in behaviors, impossible travel type of alerts that we see a lot for ourselves and for customers. But I think the usage reporting is going to be great for, from my perspective, how can I empower my team to be able to be more effective with the work that they're doing and find ways to respond to incidents or configure things differently or seek suggestions or improvements, but also providing reporting and insights into this to our customers is great too, because it shows here's kind of a peek behind the scenes of the day-to-day things that we're doing, and here's how we're using it, and here's kind of what the usage is, and here's the use cases that we've decided to use it. And so I think that's going to be good to get a look at, and I think that customers will see value in being able to see that information too.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really excited to hear how your team's going to use it here over the next few months and see where it actually fills in some holes that you have right now, in terms of probably more just time management and not always having enough resources to get the things done that you need to get done. And I'm excited to see how, from a kind of like a continuous learning and development standpoint, that as we get more people involved with using it, that they start to realize that, hey, these are the risks that are out there. This is the apps and the data that it's protecting. This is how we're using it to better govern the environment. But now that I understand kind of those like more kind of fringe pieces that maybe because I'm newer, I didn't understand, is maybe now I know, hey, these are the types of learning paths and certification paths that I want to go down to. And Copilot kind of turned me on to that. A, because I started to see it more in real time, and B, because I actually have the extra 2-3 hours a week now to kind of devote to doing some of that extra time in training.
Yep.
All right. So I wanted to give you an opportunity, and Virteva just an opportunity in general, just to kind of talk about the Change Healthcare hack that happened a few weeks back, which we were joking a little bit internally earlier in the week or late last week about how the hacker that went after Change Healthcare, or how the organization that went after them, almost kind of shot themselves in the foot and kind of ratted themselves out because as the government started to come down on them, it was like, the photo of that I generated with Designer was like 2 guys in ski masks pointing at a gun at each other, and just the Change Healthcare IT guy just standing in the middle with an open suitcase because they paid the ransom. And I
just dishing the money out.
Every organization, I feel like, needs to make the right decision for their employees and for their patients, especially when you're talking about healthcare. But where avoidable, like, we certainly don't condone paying those ransoms, because oftentimes paying that ransom is just encouraging somebody else to do it next time. But Todd, I wanted to kind of give you the soapbox and let you kind of stand up and talk on what we've been doing for our customers and how that ultimately led to none of our customers being affected by it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the practical sides of the Microsoft Defender products is being able to get visibility from the Microsoft team on their recommendations around various threats that exist within in the cybersecurity space. We went through and kind of assessed, okay, here's a very prevalent, and we do this across a lot of different threats that aren't in the news. So this is kind of our opportunity to kind of say this is something that aligns with something that was very prevalent in the news, but also something that we do internally to assure that we're doing all the things that we can for our customers to make sure that we're securing against these threats. But in this case, the Blackcat ransomware, there's a lot of things that Microsoft had made recommendations on through the process of supporting our security customers, not only with deploying the tools, but also advancing our efforts to leverage all the tools in all the ways possible against like the Microsoft Secure Score. We have implemented as a strategy in supporting our customers a lot of all of the tools and configurations of the tools to prevent and protect against that specific ransomware. Mm-hmm. It's effective against most ransomwares, but in this case, there were specifics to the Blackcat ransomware. So it's very pleasing for us to be able to go to our customers and say, hey, this is in the news. This is a very big topic. In a couple of cases, healthcare organizations were seeking assurances that their environment was configured correctly. And we were able to say, here's all the things that Microsoft is recommending. Here's the things that are protecting against that, and show evidence that we've got their environments configured correctly to protect against those threats. In addition to things like adding some custom indicators of compromise based on file hashes, IP addresses, those sorts of things, on top of device hardening, alert tuning, those sorts of things are all kind of different layers of ways that we were able to configure our customers' environments to ensure that they're as protected as they can be against that specific threat.
Great. And just kind of, again, short plug for us, some of our biggest customers that we work with are healthcare customers. So we're in a couple different kind of industry verticals out there, but healthcare is one of the biggest ones that we own. And we're very sensitive to the pain that comes with these types of attacks. And we are always doing our best to kind of be at that 120% mark of making sure that we are looking out for it, using the right tools, having the right policies is in place. We manage those services for you through our security managed services, but we also advise against that too. When you're a customer with us, almost look at having kind of like a blank check for advisory services. If you have questions, you can reach out to us. And not to say that you have to be a member with us. We always encourage people to email us or contact us via the website for kind of that advice so that we can point you in the right direction, so that we can, start that relationship with you and be able to help you on your journey, no matter what industry that you're in. Todd, any other specifically around Copilot for security or anything kind of coming down the pike that you wanted to talk about from a security context today?
No, I'm just really excited to get hands-on. I look forward to being able to be back on the show maybe in May or June or something like that with some real use cases and some real findings. Everything that we're seeing is very exciting, apart from the pricing model, which actually in hindsight, I guess that's one additional thought that I've got. It's a positive in the sense that it doesn't require our security customers to buy licensing for per individual, as we would see with the Microsoft 365 Copilot, that it's consumption based. So it allows us to operate as the MSSP for our customers and act on their behalf and leverage the tools in a consumable way rather than just adding major expenses to the organization. So I know it's kind of cryptic and it's unfortunate, but it was sort of a sense of relief too that's kind of the pricing model that they've gone with, and it's also kind of exciting to be able to educate our customers, team members, on how to utilize the security or Copilot for security internally as well, because we want them to have visibility into their environment and leverage those tools too. So very excited about that and excited to come back and talk to you again about real real use cases and real things that we've been working with.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited too for our internal team members. It'll be interesting. So the Microsoft 365 community conference that's happening in Florida at the end of April, beginning of May. I've seen kind of the schedule for that. I'm not planning on going to that one. I know Chris Strong on our side is actually planning on going down there and learning a little bit more. Again, it's probably going to be a major Copilot conference, but one of the things that came out of last year was we learned more about the SharePoint Advanced Management piece, which is, again, it's kind of like one of those tiered add-ons that you have to add on if you want to take advantage of it. But it'll be interesting to learn a little bit more about that. It'll also be interesting to learn a little bit more about how Copilot for Security is kind of running 60 days later and how it's talking to those apps and hearing a little bit of feedback from some of those app owners and just in general kind of like talking heads in general at the conference in those workshops that are going to say, these are the things that we've been doing with it that have improved overall workflows on the back end and saved us time, both from a security context and from a modern work context as well. So be happy to have you back on the show. And again, thanks for coming on. And for our audience, just wanted to again say thanks for tuning in. Just to kind of recap here. Copilot, it was announced last year. So if you're a first-time listener or a regular one, you know that we've been talking a lot about kind of the rapidly evolving generative AI landscape. We've been developing workshops and different advisory services around best practice use of Copilot, being in a good state of mind to feel like you're ready to use it and leverage it. And as a leading IT managed service and security provider, we can really help you take those next steps. So if you're interested in stepping into kind of that larger world of generative AI, which by the way, you should be, because every other business is doing it right now, you don't want to be left behind, whether it's in a security context or if it's just in the modern work context. We can certainly help you along that journey and help kind of train you and get you ready for that so that when you do decide to turn it on, you don't kind of have those wide gaps in your environment from a permissions perspective, an access or a conditional access policy perspective, and that you're ready to go and you feel like your user is safe and you've got a good governance and kind of center of excellence plan around it. So again, if you're interested in learning a little bit more and working with us on that, you can contact us by emailing us at letstalk@virteva.com, or you can visit our website at www.virteva.com. If you want even more Microsoft news outside of this podcast, you can sign up for our Microsoft 365 newsletter, again, by visiting our website. The newsletter recaps a handful of useful topics each month. So again, if you don't have time to tune into the entire show, you can just learn about those usually the first or second week of the month as we put that out. And again, thank you, Todd, so much for coming on. And I'm excited to have you back here in a couple of months to talk more about Security Copilot and how we've been using it.
Thanks for having me.
Again, to our listeners and to our watchers on YouTube, thanks again for tuning in to Virteva's Let's Talk podcast. And again, if you made it this far in the video, we really appreciate it. If you can like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that jazz, it really does help us out. Thank you. Take it easy, everyone.